Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Contact Lost on our road to LGT, where we're doing this with our little series called the LGT's Lucky Seven. And today I've got one of the unconquerables. Uh, Hello, Clement.
Hi, Joker. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you indeed. So, first off, this is your first time on Contact Lost, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your 40k history, etc., etc.
Yeah, sure, with pleasure. So I've been in VLB for quite a while. I think the first time ever I bought a box, it was back at the release of third edition. So I've been playing Space Marines, Space Wolves since third edition, Eldars and World Eaters since fifth edition, back in France, where I'm from. And I've always been on and off with playing with friends, group, and so on, etc. A bit of competitive, but never that much when I was living in France. And about 10 years ago, I moved to UK, and 40k is an amazing vector for social interactions, getting acquaintance with people in a new community and so on, etc. And little by little, I got more and more hooked into the competitive side of it. That was back in seventh when the game was interesting, shall we say?
Yes, a very nice word to use. Interesting.
Exactly.
Your dish tastes interesting. Yeah, we know all about that.
I had Ref Night back then. um, and then just kept on with it when it moved to eighth and so on, etc. I'm based in London and been just dabbing around within the gaming community in London and around. Always stick to my three factions. So people either saw me playing World Eaters and Magnus for some reasons back in eighth. It was fun.
That was the thing, yes.
Playing Space Wolf for a big chunk of ninth edition and playing Eldars in many different shape. A lot of Inari in ninth and quite recently in 10th for some reasons, Eldars and some Ref Knight at a
For
point
some
in time.
reason. Yeah, I
I don't
wonder
know.
what could those reasons be. Interesting. And what about the LGT? This year it's the 7th edition. Which edition will it be for you?
So for me, I think that will be the fourth one, either third or fourth one. The first one was in the terrain get environment when all the foam and the rage about it. And then after,
Yes.
and then I think I did one in eighth and so another one in eighth and then one in ninth. I dropped at the last minute 2 years ago. I was going to attend and I had to drop to help my partner with a business.
Right.
Yeah.
And what do you think about the event itself? Is it like something that one that you must attend each year? I guess not necessarily so, or is it just like another tournament?
So I try to attend it every year. So people who know me, I rarely cross what we call the M25, which is the main surrounding circular roads in London. So
Hmm.
I never do big events or any events where I need to spend the weekend out and so on, etc. So LGT for me is one of the top major tournaments that I can afford to attend, really, from a personal commitment perspective. So I try to go there whenever I can and do so. It's a fantastic event. So I didn't attend it before I think it was 2018 or 17, the table one. I still went there because I was friend with the London Wargaming Guild that had to organize it at the beginning. I knew Zach personally and several other people such as Malik and so on, etc. So I went there to chat with them when I could. And it's always been just an event where you just enjoy and share that passion with everyone. So for me, it's always fantastic.
Right. And what about the Invitational? Is that a first for you, or okay?
Yes.
How are you feeling about that?
I don't know. It's quite interesting. So obviously, LGT and Invitational are in a very interesting place. We had the data slates dropping just a few weeks before the list submissions. The Invitational was even before. I'm in a bracket that is quite intense. Being honest, the amateurs bracket has amazing talents, so I'm kind of lost in that group. That's my feeling. um, so I'm super excited. It's an opportunity to play with fantastic people, talk about the hobby, and so on, etc. So I'll have fun. I'll do my best, and we'll see. The list I have is not amazing, but who knows? I think at that time everybody was a bit shooting in the dark compared to the main event where people had a bit more time to prepare for it.
Okay. What was the difference? Do you know exactly in terms of weeks that one had
I
to submit
think
lists?
it was a week and a half difference. I think we had to submit it on the Wednesday, and then it was the Sunday after. So I was on holiday when I had to
Hmm.
submit that list. I do remember that, and I had about a week after coming back
Yeah. So
to try to scrap something together.
definitely had more time on the second one to have a little think. Um, why don't we start off with your top seven? So we've covered a number of topics with our guests already, and I guess subjects are even harder to think of at this point. Although you have an interesting one, which we could say is a faction focus, albeit from a bit different perspective. So, top seven hidden weaknesses that Eldar have and how to exploit them. I'm really interested in this one because I don't think I could think of seven weaknesses for Eldar.
It was pretty
So,
hard. So I don't know if it's really seven weaknesses that every Eldar list will have. But I try to find 7 points that we all need to remember when playing against Eldar, either as a mirror match or even just as a player. You turn up to the table, you're round two, you had no time to prepare for it, and then you have that dreaded matchup. 10 Rev Guard, 3 Night Spinners. Some people play that. Uh, no judgments.
top seven reasons why the Eldar need a buff. Right. So, why don't you start us off with number one or number seven? I don't know if you have them in a
uh,
descending, ascending order or just like randomly.
It's more or less randomly, but I start with I think the first one for me, which is the most important. I place it as seven because I think it's the one that we should all start with. It's whenever you and that works for it does. I think it's a kind of a broader advice and not necessarily weaknesses, but when you turn up to the table, you always have your game plan in your head. Everybody knows the rounds, the terrain, the missions, and we all have our list and you have a game plan. Don't get distracted. Don't get afraid and frazzled by having the dreaded Eldar matchup. The Eldar play is all about the disruption and trying to find all the little weaknesses in your game plan by outmaneuvering you, hiding when you try to pinch them in a corner, and so on, etc. So don't try to outmaneuver them. Don't try to be smarter than them in terms of like capability and all the rules. They got it all, and you probably have some, but not enough most of the time. So stick to your plan, be confident about yourself, and really don't try to switch too much in terms of technique. If you go aggressive, go up to the maximum and go for it without any hesitation, even if you have some bad rolls at some moment, etc. It's quite important to not be impacted by how the Eldar player is trying to work around you, because that's what they're going to try to do most of the time. There's a couple of archetype of lists in Eldars. Either you have quite a lot of people are playing the 10 Rev list, so you're going to have that anchor in their game plan that is going to be bullying the middle of the table most of the time, securing their primaries. And then you have all these little elements disrupting your play, slowing you down, such as spinners, controlling your movements, the spiders doing the scoring and damages, triggering the incon, etc. Don't get too distracted by all of it, and stick to your gun. So if you have a solution to Revguard, apply it and think about how you're going to trigger it and put it in place in the most efficient way. If you don't, play around it as best as you can, and really think about your game plan that you already have from the beginning when you turn up to the table.
That sounds a little bit applicable to the games in general. So it's a good one to remember, especially when seeing the Eldari army, your opening screen, and thinking, "Oh God, no, not this shit."
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. It was even more striking before the data slates. Your opponent walks to the table, he sees 1 or 2 Rev Niners. I can't do anything about it. As I said, it's a very basic first advice about weaknesses. Don't be rattled, don't be disrupted by the Eldar play and game mind, and they have a bully list, yes, but not everybody can maneuver them in the best way, and now Eldars are a lot more susceptible to it.
Okay. As an Eldar player, what do you think of the changes the data slate brought in to the faction and to the meta in general? Has it been well deserved? Is it change for good, or you're like, oh no, they ruined my Eldar?
Oh no, I have to shave my Rev Knight again. So, did they get what they deserve? I'm going to say no. They deserve probably a bit more. But what the data slate brought to the table is really good. It really impacted in the right places the Eldar game and the overall meta, where we saw a lot of the bullying top 2 factions going down and opening a lot more wider the realm of possibilities. And what they did as well with, for example, bringing down the custodies, they opened up a lot more different playstyles where combat becomes more viable. And we see it with Chaos Space Marines being a lot more prevalent in the meta at the moment. World Eaters showing a bit more their chainswords. So it's really good. They could have probably done a bit more into the Eldar toolbox, but it's such a deep index with so many amazing data shit that it's really hard to put it on the same ground as everyone in one data slate, I'm going to say. So it's quite good that we see that incremental approach from Games Workshop, where they don't want to just shut down completely something. They try to shy away from it, which is good. And here they just really shut down a couple of strong interactions elements, such as Devastating Wound and Fed Dice. Now, Devastating Wound is not as bullying as it used to be. Towering is not the same anymore. So all of that has been very, very good, I think, overall. And we can see it many different takes in the Eldar lists, in the different lists that we see as well, the different factions representation in LGT is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Right on. So why don't we move on with another Eldar weakness?
Yeah, so Eldar, we all know, have some amazing stratagems. Fine Fade and Phantoms are the 2 main ones that we all know, and love is maybe a strange word to it, but it depends who you are. I love it.
I think it's a very much a love-hate relationship with Phantasm for the gay community.
Exactly, which means they're always going to have their autark and so on, etc. They are very CP dependent to execute their game plan. So if you try to force them to use their CP at the wrong place, the wrong time, you're going to impact their ability to drive the game how they like, and it's going to shut down as well their mobility. So if you start to tag units, they need to fall back and shoot. That's a CP, and therefore, instead of having 2 to 3 CP available, they have 1 to 2, so they can't do a Fire and Fade, for example, or they're going to either be able to Overwatch or Phantasm. You limit their capabilities. So by trying to impact their CP economy, you can as well start to control a bit more what they're going to be able to. So they'll have a choice. Am I going to Phantasm or am I going to Overwatch? If they have that choice, then you can actually give them the wrong options, or a situation where no matter what they do, they're going to lose something, which is so every unit for the Eldar now are counting a lot more because they have a lot less of them available, especially if you play 10 Rev Guards. It's a 500 point combination of units, so that's a quarter of the list. If you start to chip away all the units, then they have very little left on the board to do what they need. So CP, impacting their CP expenditure and economy, is quite important if you're able to. Unfortunately, the new ruling around the Colexus ability and the old Vect, as we all like to call it, doesn't work that way anymore. Albeit CP reroll, they do like it sometimes, and so on, etc. That can help. But I'm going to say, if you have the opportunity to have some aggressive plays with cheap units, to force them to fall back, to be able to execute their plan, and so on, etc., is actually quite can just add up. So that turn 2, turn 3, they don't have that CP bank of like 5, so that they can do their Fine Fade, their Phantas, their Overwatch at the same time, and just pound you in a corner very, very hard.
Are there any other stratagems in the Eldari Index perhaps worth using, or can you not bait any of them?
So it's quite interesting. There is a couple that very oddly comes back, but not rare, not that frequent. So there's one CP auto advance 6 inches. Most of the time you'll use a fate dice, let's be honest. So you're not going to use it that often, but in the turn where they need 2 units to advance very quickly, they can use it. So that's one stratagem you see maybe once every other game. Fall back, shoot, and charge. This one is being used quite often. At least I use it quite often, either because I charge something, I tag it, try to get stuck into somewhere, and then just fall back, do actions, do what you need to do, and so on, etc. So that's another one.
And that is one you can actually make the Eldar player use.
Exactly.
It's something you can influence.
Exactly. A good thing as well to keep in mind is if you tag warp spiders, they can't move 24 inches because it's a normal move. So there's a couple of things that if you have a right toolbox to do it, like fast chip units, they are actually quite worth considering to just slow down or take control of the pace of how the Eldar player is going to expose his units and do what he likes.
And we've spoken about the data slate changes in general, but now that we've started talking about stratagems, I have to ask about your opinion on Phantasm. Because we did a review here on Contact Lost of the data slate, and I said that I don't think that Phantasm has actually been nerfed. What's your take on it? Because my argumentation was that lists will change to just using more infantry anyway, so it will be like the same.
I think it's twofold. So I do agree. I don't think it's been really nerfed. It's just a sidestep. Based and my reasoning, there's 2 elements. You're absolutely right. The list can just pivot to more infantry. A second element to it is the new ruling about the hull for tanks, which has a base. So now it's the whole tank shape that counts. What it means that the real estate you have in deployment or to hide your tanks, especially for Eldars, which are small base, very big tank, you could just hide them very well because you just had to hide the base behind the terrain and you can just overhang. It didn't count it. Now it does. It reduces your safety places, and you're going to have this couple of spinners at least. If you have 1, it's fine. You're probably going to have 2 or 3. That already takes a lot of space, especially in UKTC, which means they're going to be harder and harder to just keep safe. And they're your long-term damage most of the time and controlling plan. So the Eldar list, which had spinners, fire prism, hornets, war walkers, and so on, etc., I think are a lot less efficient compared to heavy infantry because they can't really use that stratagem, and they lost a lot of safe zone in the terrain boards nowadays.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that's good to note. Number 5, shall we?
So number 5 is you need to bring the right tools to fight the Eldars. So Eldars have really they can't deal with everything as they used to. Breath Knight was and D cannons as well to a lower extent, where jack of all trades. As soon as a roll of 6, I can answer every problem most of the time. You just mortal wound to death everything. Maybe you need a couple of turns, like you hit some Lich Guards. You don't wipe them in one turn, unless you're very lucky, but in 2 turns, yeah, they're going to be gone. They can't do that anymore. So they're going to be very specialized, either heavy onto attacking against the odds or heavy onto single hard targets. Brave Guards don't answer everything as well. So 10 Brave Guards with Brave Cannons are at best going to kill 10 models, and that's it. They're not going to kill 30. So having the right tool in front of the Eldar list and recognizing where they are very weak in terms of threats is going to be giving you the right momentum to push forwards and then trigger that 0.6, which is forcing them to use their CPs where they don't want to, and so on, etc. So push back the game into their side of the table. At the moment, and the way I'm just reading through the list, Eldars are struggling to answer, for example, the 20 warrior Necron stat check. They have no proper answer to it. At best, they're going to kill maybe 16, maybe 15, but they're never going to kill the 20 and the 2 cryptophores, and so on, etc. So you have to understand where they're going to be weak and push that. So hordes, resilient hordes, are a great weakness to Eldar, in my opinion, at the moment. I'm going to be extremely afraid of seeing Necron every time I'm going to have that pairing in LGT. It's very, very difficult to answer it. The same with the Curse Cultist, which has such a deep wound pool to leverage, res models twice per battle rounds, and so on, etc. So they just shrug off your damage if you're not able to one-tap them. That's one of their key weaknesses. But that means you are able to present that element to them. A non-resilient hordes such as Tyranids or Orcs to a lower extent, ignoring the activation lock that trucks can present, are less problematic to them because they have such a high volume of shots with their secondary units such as Spiders, Dark Reapers, for example, or Shadow Spectres, and so on, etc. They just force enough saves to remove these more squishier kind of hordes. So it's knowing that element as well to know where you can present something.
So it's not any horde that can tackle the Eldari. Are there any other bad matchups potentially now for Eldar?
Yeah, I would say a very fast, threatening army can be very damaging to Eldars. So I think, interestingly enough, or in my view, is a very high pressure turn one. I'm going to put you in a corner and threaten you really, really hard and put pressure very quickly is always hard to manage. And the Eldar may be a bit rattled at that moment. So if you're able to push very quickly, so World Eaters can do that, for example, Chaos Space Marines with the Chosens, they can just disembark from a Rhino and just walk up and advance and charge, or just their Warp Talons can move minimum 13 to 18 inches and then charge. Can present a big challenge to the Eldars. Now, we all know the problem is Eldars can just start in a corner and just zoom up the board very quickly. So it's knowing when you can push that momentum forwards. I mentioned the Orcs, for example, is not necessarily a problem. But if you stage it very well, for example, you move up turn 1, and then turn 2, you put your well out and you start to put the pressure and do multiple charges and attack their assets in different places and occupy the board, they're going to struggle to reassemble their force and pinpoint their damage. Eldar is more stacking up medium damage, and then has one big hammer with a rev gun, for example. They don't have that wider spread homogeneous damage that other armies can have. So, for example, you take Chaos Space Marines, it's medium high damage everywhere. Every activation is going to hurt. Eldars is chipping away.
Okay. And out of those, I think Necron Warriors are a bit obvious one in the meta currently, but Chaos Space Marines, I think, are a bit on the rise. Have you had a chance to look through the lists? Because I think they went live today.
Yes.
Are there a lot of Accursed Cultist blobs now? Is it really that popular, or have people not figured it out in time for the LGT?
It's quite interesting. So there is several lists with 1 or 2 blobs. I think I saw a couple with 3 blobs even. The interesting builds that I've seen, especially amongst the higher skill players, such as Ines, Liam, there's several other players using it, but they're just top of my head. I'm really bad. Alexandre Sacco as well is using it, for example, where they have these triple loads, 3 units of Chosen, sometimes 5/5/5 or 10/5/5, 2 Rhinos, Warp Talons, and then the usual firing bears with 1-2 units of Obliterators, sometimes 4 and 2, 2 and 2, or just 4. And 1 or 2 Forge Fins, which is such an incredible fire base and damage output. But these lists do not have a Curse Cultist. They just have more toolbox MSU style and very fast threat projections with hard punching units, and with very interesting wound profiles. Chosen are 3 wounds, which, for example, for a tower, well, that's very, very bad efficiency for them, which they have only damage 1 or 2, and well, most of the time it's just damage 2, so they need twice the amount of damage to go through.
So, how do Eldar feel going up against such an MSU CSM list?
It's
That
really
can put
interesting.
pressure real quick.
It's really interesting because you have that that central element with the rhinos, which are Nurgle, obviously, so they can be untargetable, so pseudo line up. So if you're not able to move up close, open the rhino, and then deal with the Chosen out of it, it means that you are handing over the control of the threats and of the engagements to the Chaos Space Marines. And if a player is good enough, he can just control the boards, control the primaries very efficiently, and just make sure that the Eldar can't go wherever he likes without being threatened by 1 or 2 of these rhinos. By being hidden with these medium L's that we all know in the center, or just tucking in these small L's, the rhino, and suddenly you're in the center of the board. You disarm back 3, move 6 inches, advance, and you can just threaten very, very quickly the home objective with impunity, because you can't be spinned if you're hiding in a rhino. Yeah, what a shame.
Yeah, shame indeed. Right. So number 4? Yeah.
Number 4, which ties perfectly with the topic, threat management and resource management is very important for the Eldar player. They used to have control over threats with big bully units. They had way too many assets available in their toolbox because everything was way too cheap. It's not the case anymore. Everything that was played went up by 10, 15 points, etc. So a lot of the list just dropped resources. And we all know Eldar's resources are not very tough, apart from a couple of them, meaning if you can hit them, they're just going to die. Indirect line of sight with AP0, just kill anyway. spiders and shadow specters, because their defense are just really bad. I mean, it's 5 to 6 months T3, free up armor save. Just die way too quickly. So
Yeah, as long as you can target them.
Exactly. So obviously, indirect line of sight is a great tool against Eldar. That's why they hate Imperial Guard most of the time, because they see all these indirect weapons. The mirror is always a massive headache, especially if you have Dark Reapers. You're going to be able to threaten these scoring units if they are on the board very, very quickly. If you can threaten all these units and remove their assets at a fast pace enough, they're going to be left with almost nothing to play the game. They can't play the game entirely with just the Incarn and 10 Rev Guards. Yes, it's still going to hurt whenever they're going to touch something, but they're going to struggle to do everything they need to if they are left with just a handful of units. Or if they, you lock down the night spinners and so on, etc. So being able to challenge that resource management is really important for derailing that Eldar pace in the control of the game.
And where are Dark Reapers? And now that you've mentioned them, they were obnoxious in 8th, non-existent in 9th. Are they now a good tech piece for the Eldari mirror, or they're just generally not so great, or an auto-include?
I won't say it's an auto-include. They just went up by 5 points. I think at 75, they were just a steal. So in my first couple of lists, I was using 2 units. With my friend Dan, we are using 2 to 3 units at the moment. We just love them because they're so cheap. They present some good weapons. They're good into the mirror. They're good into the games where you have Horde because, well, 2d6 blast. That's always good. And they present as well that profile shot as well, which is strength 8, AP2, damage 2, ignore cover, or 2 shots, strength 5, AP2, damage 1, ignore cover. Which again is quite good into certain targets. It's not always amazing, but at the price point, what they can present is always great. And in a pinch, they're always a good screening unit. I mean, if you lose them in a game where they can't do anything, it's only 80 points. There's not that many cheap units that you can have in the Eldar Codex. So,
and ignore cover is actually very valuable in this edition, so that's good for them. Yeah, you want to finish the thought? Or something?
It's exactly. So the ignore cover, when you look at the profile, AP2 is not great. Let's be honest, it's not amazing. But AP2 ignoring cover is the same as AP3 essentially. And in the Eldar list build, it means that you don't necessarily need then the Viper to deal with certain, defensive profile where they have toughness 4 or toughness 5, a bad armor save, and no invul. Then it's amazing.
And I'm not sure if this can be answered easily, but would you say that when playing Eldar, is it more important to focus on the scoring? I want to say scoring units, or is it more important to try get rid of the Incarn or the Wraith Guard blob as soon as you get an opportunity and just commit into those?
That's a great question. I'll answer the Incarn first because it's a very interesting one. So defend yourself to a certain degree to the Incarn, and by that, what you can do is you tuck your squishy units susceptible to indirect line of sight to be in a position where that when the Incarn teleports is always going to be in a bad place. Keep in mind that you can always control to a certain degree where the Incarn can teleport. So try to leverage that. Fly is not as all powerful as it used to be. So when it's in the wrong side of a wall, it has to walk a long way around to go and do what it needs to do. So keep that in mind. So you can try to protect yourself in the early game against the Incarn, but you can't always ignore it. So you need to time it at the right moment. If you have that armor units that can go and pick up the incarn very efficiently or very reliably. And you can provoke the Eldar player to teleport too eagerly, be a bit too condescending and overconfident, that a lot of Eldars are, for some reasons. Eldar
For some
players.
reason.
You can bait it, essentially, and try to get them into a trap where they're going to feel comfortable, and you come with strategic reserve, big unit, with a big hammer, and just go for it. What you need to do is, keep in mind, deal with the incarn first. Don't stop. Go to the end. If you start on it, do not stop. Because otherwise, it's going to hurt you so badly. It's the sequencing of it is going to be crucial. So go for it if you can, but don't be focused too much on it. If you are not able to answer it with confidence, either you chip damage for it little by little, so that the Eldar player can't be as of a bully, or you just ignore it and make sure that everything is quite well spaced, or it's tucked in with something else blocking the teleport to happen in the wrong side of the wall, and so on, etc. Makes the encounter a lot harder to then leverage for the Eldar player. And at 350 points, he wants to make some money out of it. In regards of the Rev Guards, it all depends how it's being played by your opponent. If he goes in and is very bully, you can't really ignore it. If it's 6 inches away from your deployment zone by the start of your shooting phase, you have to answer it. Otherwise, you are going to be in a very, very rough spot for turn 2. So you have to understand when and where you have to interact with it, or if you can just avoid it altogether. Personally, I don't really have a great answer to it in my current list, but I've got enough mobility to just try to work around it. So one Rev Guard blob is something that I can potentially manage, especially if I go first, put a spin on it, and so on, etc. But I've got a great tool, which is the nice spinner that not everyone has, unfortunately. I think the key point there is almost every army should have some level of controlling or dealing damage to the Rev Guards. Because we all know what are the current boogiemans of the meta. You have Terminators with the Deathwing Terminators. Everybody are afraid of them, and kept in mind, hopefully, when they build their list, how to deal with them. Lich Guards are kind of the same profile, with high toughness, good armor save, 2 wounds with a 5-up Finop Pen, which is about 3 wounds, and so on. So Rev Guard are almost in that same kind of profile into it. So most of the time they're going to have an answer. You're going to have an answer about it, especially if you're a Tau. The 6-man crisis suits can just pick it up or kill about 7 of them in one activation with all the right buff. I mean, if there's only 2 or 3 Rev Guard left, just ignore it. Even if they revive one, you do that turn 3, by turn 5, that 2 Rev Guard become 4. 4 Rev Cannon shooting. Can ignore it.
After the devastating wound change, it's not that
exactly bad. Yeah, it's, you can accept to a certain degree some punch.
Yeah. Right. Number 3, shall we?
So number 3, I touched upon it in my number 4 as well. They're susceptible to indirect. Indirect is such a massive answer to Eldar. As I mentioned, they are very squishy. They are very soft in most of their scoring in fast unit and so on, etc. Or even key characters. The Farsi, nobody takes a bodyguard unit. Let's be honest. Nobody pays for the Guardians or the Warlock Conclave because it's just a wasting points. He is not very tough, especially that most of the players will have a Phoenix Gem on the Autarch and not on the Farsi. this is a bit more less. He's a bit more expendable. So you have these soft units that you can easily kill if you have that indirect. A great army that can leverage it is, for example, Chaos Knights. If you spam the baby knights, it means you have about 13 havoc launchers.
Yeah.
That's
You can
13
get to
d6.
13 d6 shots.
13 d6 shots, and a couple of them will have that d6 plus 1 because it's blast. And a strength 5, so it's going to be hitting on 4s or 3s. I think some of them have BS2.
Yeah, the full shooty ones have. So, and you're taking 6 of those all the time nowadays.
Yeah.
So yeah, 6 of them will hit on 3s.
Yeah. So 6d6, which have at least 3 of them will probably be d6 plus 1, hitting on 3s, winning on 3s. It just adds up. And you're going to remove all these scoring elements to the Eldar player. Now, with that threat, for example, as an Eldar player, you have to consider, what am I going to deploy? And if you deploy not enough, it means that if you play tactical, you may just get the wrong cards, and you have to expose some of the units that you don't. Like you have to play with the Otakwe Leaper a bit too aggressively, or you have to present Fuegan a bit too early in the game. Just jump on these opportunities to start to work on them. They can't regen wounds, so every damage you do is a damage taken forever, and then you can just force them to die, possibly come back. Just hope that you're going to be that player that will roll the 1. It will happen. There's a lot of Wiggins, there's a lot of Otak with a finished gem. It will happen. Just force it to be you.
So if someone has that much no-less shooting, wouldn't the Autark be the number 1 target, as it ties in with number 6 CPU management on the other side?
It will be really good if you are within 12 inches of him, because he's a lone up, and he's
lone
the
up. Okay.
he's the best at that, unfortunately. So, which is
Mm.
where early game there is that always debate. So in the mirror game, there's going to be some Eldar listeners, obviously. The Eldar player who goes first always have that. There's always going to be, or very likely to be, a target for your spinner to kill and trigger the income. You have to wage in and consider, do I then jump my Khan early on, try to do crippling damage, remove that CPU regeneration, and force you to deal with the Khan turn 1 into my deployment zone, into your deployment zone, to your opponent's deployment zone, so that they are just keep at the back. Now, it's a double-edged sword. You're very likely to lose your Khan a lot quicker than what you think. Every time I do that, I can't roll a save for my life. So I try to not do it anymore. It doesn't matter. Every time someone shoot my encounter, say, yeah, you've got a 2-up, I'm gonna say, cool. Once. That's good. That's good. Either you accept that you're going to lose that very powerful tool, but if you've done the right amount of damage, you might just be trading up in the long term, where, let's assume you teleport, you kill the Autark, you kill a Night Spinner in combat, and maybe the Autark a second time, for example, like you've been super greedy. Imagine if you kill like 2 Night Spinners or 1 Night Spinner and the Autark turn 1, and maybe the Farseer, for example. That's a lot of like key units that your opponent is going to be losing. But if you do that, you have to make sure that you have follow-up activations that is going to keep on the pressure. If you do it, and then after that, you just have your spinners, which are good, but not that great, and you have just Warp Spiders and Shadow Specters, that's not really necessarily a good trade either. So you have to wage in when you have to be very, very aggressive very early on, or not, in that aspect.
Okay, so that's interesting, because before I had the feeling that it would almost always be beneficial to play aggressively versus Eldar, but sounds like in the mirror maybe not so much.
Yeah, in the mirror, it's the Incarn is such a powerful tool that it's not necessarily beneficial.
Mm.
And in either of the games, removing that pressure of the incarn early on simplify your opponent's play. So if you throw away your incarn without the right amount of damage you're going to do, and it can be so removing some key units, but as well creating that that confidence damage as well to your opponent. You know, it just hurts you to see suddenly you've got the incarn in your deployment zone on your home objective. And for example, it's called Stormer style objective. So the one that is 8 VP, because you control your opponent's home objective. You do that turn one, like you teleported, you kill a Night Spinner or Fire Prince hiding there, you kill the Autarch, and you control the home objective. That's just moral breaking elements that can be devastating. But as well, if your opponent just is not frazzled and goes back to point 7, don't get frazzled. Just stay, 2 feet on the ground, take a step back, and just think, what is your game plan? What was your game plan to deal with Incarn? And go with it, or just ignore it and move away from it. Yeah, it's very interesting. That aggressive play sometimes pays off, sometimes doesn't. And having that Incarn alive in the late game is incredibly hard to deal with. The longer it stays on the board, the harder it is to deal with it.
Oh yeah, it's kind of obvious because you have less resources, and then it becomes that much harder.
And more resources to jump around as well. It's more trigger points for the teleports in the wrong place. You've got less obsec to contest. It's 3 obsec that teleports on an objective, for example. It's horrible to deal with.
You've mentioned different archetypes. Are there different Eldar archetypes nowadays, and what are they, if you can tell us?
Yeah, so I think at the moment, what we've seen up so far since the data set was mostly in the US, where we saw they are very focused on Incarn, sometimes the Avatar, 2 to 3 Fire Priests, 1 Night Spinner, and then plenty of Warp Spiders, Shadow Spectres, and War Walkers. They're very, very heavy on the Fire Prism, so very heavy shooting, very good against hard targets. And I think the Games Workshop terrain layouts give this very long firing lane across the boards or in the open. There's always something visible, etc. So they're quite good there. And they can just play kind of like a pool element of, that corner, this one is in that corner, the other one is just there, and just you can get all the good firing lane with them. We don't see that in UK, not that much. We're a bit more bully table with a lot of indirects. So going through the list in LGT, because obviously we all did that. We all went through our own faction and all the list and look at different elements. So obviously the Incarn is almost everywhere in every single list. So I'm not going to spend too much time about it. It's more outside of the HQs, what do you see most of the time? What has been the most frequent is 10 Rave Guards with a Spirit Sea, either double or triple Swooping Orcs, or Shadow Spectres and some Warp Spiders. The ratio varies. 2 to 3 Night Spinners has been very present. War Walkers as well are quite frequent. So you will see an anchor with the Rave Guards that can just go push the middle or just sit on an objective and make it absolutely impossible to deny, because they're just going to sit there, occupy the space. Like, you can't put a single model there. And then have all the different other elements, play aggression, trigger the Incarn. So zooming 24 inches, the Warp Spiders. Your opponent will make the mistake sometimes to just overwatch them. You let them die, teleport the Incarn, and you're like, hey, there you go. Now I'm going to have some fun with the Incarn in your backfield. in the wrong place where you did not want to. So that's one of the key archetypes. There is several lists with no rev guards, and this is where you see a bit more go wild. So more units with like more, we still see some hornets, more war walkers, dark reapers. So Dan and myself, for example, are a big fan of dark reapers. We're a bit awkward. And we've seen as well, I think, two awkward of us playing the Crimson Hunters. So I have two. I may have a problem in my head. I don't know. We'll have to see if it's good or not. I think I saw another one being played. I think it's Bass Crutcher that is using one as well. But these lists have not that big anchor with the rev guards, but it's more just a lot of toolbox. Damage is everywhere, fast elements everywhere. They have good variations and degree of different shooting profiles between all the different blasts, the direct shots, and so on, etc. And then we've got one crazy person as well who brought 20 rev guards. And I'll let you guess who is the person who loves to bully everybody and just table them as quickly as possible. It is Nassim.
Oh, he's taken Eldar. Oh, I'm disappointed.
Shocking.
Yeah,
so Nassim is on double rev guards, which is I think it fits very well his playstyle, which is very aggressive. Just bully one aspect of the game, either early on do the damage and make it so that turn 2 you have no way to really answer what he's posing on in front of you, or late game he's just going to sit on all the objectives and you can't really steal them back.
Okay. Why don't we go to your number 2 now?
Number 2 is very interesting. So as I mentioned, Eldars have a lot of different shooting profiles between the blast and so on, etc. What is interesting is their range. And their range is not that great. Apart from bright lances and star cannons, everything is 24 inches and below. What it means is you can control their firing lane and where they have to be in order to shoot you. So with them, so yes, they're super fast, they can go wherever they want and so on, etc. But still, if they want to shoot you, they have to be in specific places where they see you and where they're in range. And you can try to control that or make it so that they're going to be, even with Iron Fed, even with Phantasm, they're not going to be in the best place when they're going to complete their shooting activation. Or if they have to come to you, you can have that sweet Overwatch against their resources. Again, don't fall for the trap. If they just teleport spiders in front of you, they probably want you to Overwatch them so that he can teleport the Incarn. So you have to assess whether it's worth removing an asset and then have the Incarn and deal with the Incarn, possibly, if you set up the trap, or you just accept it and wait for the right moments. But as an Eldar player, every time I move one of my units to go for scoring, every time you have to think about the sequencing of your movements to not get the Overwatch in that unit that you really want to move in the right place at the right moment. So that's an interesting element. They are very short range, essentially, in my opinion. Rev guards only 18 inches, which means the actual effective threat range is 24 inches when they start their movement phase. Yes, they can move 12 and then another 6 in your turn before they can do another 6. So you have to keep that in mind, but you can pretty much map out where they're going to go and where they can be to do the damage.
Okay, those are very interesting remarks. I mean, there really is quite a lot of game and skill needed to pilot the Eldar. It's not that much brain dead of an army as one might think.
Not anymore. Thankfully, not anymore. That's, I think, one of the great benefits of a data slate, which removing the Ref Knight, which was a very straightforward push forward, roll big dices, and just roll as many sixes as you can. It's not that anymore. So you have to be very mindful of how you expand your resources and where you move them to do the right damage. And you will see, and every time I move my units, I'm like, okay, so if you want to overwatch, I'm going to move so that only one of your model will overwatch. You're not going to overwatch then. It's quite interesting because by removing the choice as well, you remove that poor CP expenditure as well from your opponent. So sometimes it's good to bait that overwatch, either to trigger the encounter or just force your opponent to burn through CPs. Or if you just, as an Eldar player, are super cautious and you're like, I'm going to be, just the tip of the guns are going to be outside of a rune, and I can see you, I'm just barely within 24 inches of your one model, nobody else can see me. It's great. But you do as well a favor to your opponents. Because, again, you're limiting their choice, they don't have to think about it. They're saving their time, they don't have to roll dice, they're saving their CPs, and as well, your opponent is essentially controlling where you're going to be to get these very long angles and narrow angles to avoid the overwatch. Because anything shooting, for example, like Shadow Spectres is going to kill them most of the time.
So playing too cautiously can actually be used against the Eldar player.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
All right. What have you got in your list?
So
they are live at the moment we're recording, right?
Yeah.
It's no secret anymore.
It's no secret anymore. So in my list, obviously, I have the Incarn. I have a note. I've got a Notak Whale Leaper. He's got Fake Messenger because I didn't had enough. I'm lying slightly, but I didn't took the Phoenix Gem. Maybe I'll regret it. I have a Troop Master with his Power Blades and a Fusion Pistol. And I've got a single Warlock on foot with a Singing Spear. I've got Harlequin Boats. I've got a 5-man Harlequin Troop with two Fusion Pistols, 2 Neuros, the Power Blade on the Sergeant, and the rest with 4 Harlequin weapons. I have 2 squad of 5 Dark Reapers with Tempest Launchers on the Exarch. I've got 2 squad of 5 Shadow Spectres, 2 squad of 5 Warp Spiders, 2 Night Spinners, and 2 Crimson Hunters with Bright Lances. So two of many things.
Yeah, and sounds a bit off meta, but at least it's interesting, I would say.
Yeah, it's. I hope it will do well enough. We'll see. I unfortunately didn't really have much time to practice, so it's all in my mind and my head in terms of how I'm going to play it. But I've made a lot of fun of everybody playing aircraft when we're extremely powerful and bad interactions. And I've always hated when Games Workshop have aircraft, introduce aircraft in 5th edition. 6th edition was a mess because of it, and so on, etc. And here you go. Now I've got 2 aircrafts. You know, it's what is the irony out of it is quite funny. I like to say.
Well, they're not all powerful at the moment, so at least you've got that going for you.
Exactly. You know, I can turn up to the table and I say, you know, I've got 2 Crimson Hunters. My list is not good.
Yeah, exactly. You're using them after they were full.
Exactly. So yeah, the list is trying to not answer only one element and has a lot of different toolbox and different layer of utility, damage, small awkward tricks, and so on, etc. Yeah.
Understood. Right, so let's finish peeling the onion. Number 1.
Number 1, I think so. I think this one is quite interesting. The key points, the key weakness, in my opinion, in every single Eldar list is objective control. Every single model outside of tanks and vehicle will be OC1. They don't have high OC presence on objective at all. They used to have the Wraith Knights, that was OC10, and then or 5 when it was wounded. It doesn't have these small units with OC2, for example, that 5 models is equivalent of 10, and so on, etc. What it means that if you have these high ops OC models, you will be a lot more efficient at trading the control of primaries. As soon as you're able to put your foot on the objective, every of your model will be way more efficient into primary control than any model in the Eldar side. And that can be either from an aggressive perspective or defensive. By that, what I mean is if you can solidify one objective in the middle of a board in these medium Ls, the Eldar will really struggle to dig you out if he can't interact with you with his shooting phase. The combats, we all know there's only one unit that do combat in the Eldar Codex, 2. The Avatar of Cain or the Incon. Everything else is god-awful most of the time. Fuegan and the Solitaire are okay, but they are not going to dig out a big unit sitting on it with like 10 to 15 models with OC2 or OC3 and so on. So if you can control the primary of them, you will be in the front seat a lot more easily. And you can have a cheaper trade from a body perspective into denying or scoring primaries than what the Eldar player will have to do to solidify his scoring. And that shows especially late game, where they're going to have almost nothing on the table. They're going to have maybe the Otak Whale Leaper, if they're lucky. They're going to have a couple of Night Spinners, maybe 1 or 2 Shadow Spectres hiding. Hopefully the Incan will be dead, meaning that at best they'll put on an objective OC6 at best. So if you're able to preserve enough high OC models, you can just take it back and shut down their scoring late game.
But you need to survive to that moment to do it.
Yes.
Which might be tough.
It might be tough, but if we go back to all the different elements we talked about, threat management, resource management, the horde resilience aspect of it, etc., can just stack up together and give you that chance at the end of it. So don't forget your game plan and fight every single turn as much as you can, keeping in mind all these different elements and trying to force and to give the onus to the Eldar player to be forced to take actions and to be forced to do stuff that he doesn't want to do. The more you put pressure on them in terms of taking the wrong choices, I have to either save my Night Spinner, well, we can't do that anymore, but I have to save either my Otak or I have to put my Rev Guard into scoring range, but I can't do both. Then it becomes a lot harder for the Eldar to just carry on having that leading and driving seat in the game states.
Right, and I was wondering if you were going to bring one point of, I guess, advice that I could think of up, which is when deploying against an Eldar player, think about the stuff that you have that Night Spinners can pick up turn 1.
Yep.
Put them in reserve, put them in transports, just so you don't risk having that Incon in your deployment zone at the start of the game.
Exactly, or tuck them in. So I think it's something that I mentioned a bit earlier. So if you take, for example, the runes with the corners like that, so being the medium of a big elf, for example, if you put your tank, for example, you've got a rhino with all your chosens, for example, which are there. If you put your cultists in the top triangle of a corner. And you have a rhino up against them, and they're squashed as much as possible against the walls. What it means that if the Eldar player goes after your cultists and kill them, you can, if, for example, you're against me or Dan with Dark Reapers, with all the Dark Reapers and so on, etc. But yeah, we can pick 10 cultists very easily. By picking the model that is going to be at the highest point, he will not be able to place the base of the Incarn without being in engagement range with a rhino. So he has to go on the other side of the wall. If he's on the other side of the wall, he can't interact at all with anything that is behind the wall, because you just stay an inch out from the walls, essentially. So that kind of tuck-in deployment and essentially move blocking the Incarn teleports. He can still teleport, but he will teleport in the wrong place, so that he can't just go in and just slash something, burn something else, and so on, etc.
Yep. So a 3 additional tip to the 7 we've discussed.
Yep.
There you go. Right. Who are you playing in round 1 of the Invitational? Do you know?
Yes, I know. It is my good friend Dan Whitaker. So we have an Eldar mirror on round 1.
You deserve it, guys.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, so it's a dice down face off, and yeah, we are both facing each other's. So I've got 10 Dark Reapers, he's got 15, but I've got in my invitation list, I have a Wave Serpent.
Nice piece of tech to protect those guys.
Yeah, yeah. My invitation list is slightly different. I took the Wave Serpent as well because I've got a Solitaire, so he can just waltz out of it, and so it gives him extra range as well.
Yep.
So small,
all right.
Small funny tech.
Good piece. Any final thoughts? You want to add? Maybe you want to, I don't know, plug an Instagram or whatever you might have going on.
No, I don't really have any real social media presence. But if anybody sees me at the LGT, and I mean, the people who knows me, you know, I just always enjoy having a beer, having a laugh, having a chat. So never hesitate, walk to the table, say hi. Always happy to chat about how to deal with Eldars, how to play Space Wolf as well. I almost brought them to the Invitational, but due to not being able to really have any practice with them, I just took the easy path.
Maybe how to play World Eaters, because they seem to be still in a not so good spot.
Yeah, World Eaters. Oh.
Almost forgot about that one.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Anthony Vanella has them. He is someone that I am absolutely confident will do amazing in that LGT with them.
Fingers crossed for him as well. Right, Clement, it was great to have you and to talk about the Eldar. That was definitely very interesting, at least for me. I want to say that hopefully for you, not many people listen to this episode, so they don't know how to beat you. But it wouldn't be fully honest, because I obviously want a lot of people listening to the show I'm co-creating. Nevertheless, I've been Joker, and if you like what we do, please like our videos and Facebook posts and whatever. Subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell button, and also consider becoming a Patreon. We have got some merch already going on for the patrons. I've got the shirt, they just arrived in today. I also picked up the bag of dice. Oh, it's blurring out too much. Right, I don't. Will I bother taking one out, showing the? Yes, it's got our little logo on it. There, keep it sharp. Damn it. You can pick these up at the LGT if you want, £1 each. And the bag is all I have. So yeah, they're limited. I think that's about it. So we're very excited for the event. Clement, see you there. And bye-bye to all the listeners.
Bye, everyone.